Hi, this is intended to be a little intro to using Photoshop, whether it's Photoshop Elements or Photoshop Creative Cloud. Should do the same thing, slightly different menus to get there. The intention of this is to draw a happy face by the time we're done with this. I'm going to try to keep it as quick as I can, but we're going to take it right from the defaults, first opening Photoshop, and we'll try to customize it to get it to behave the way we want to. So here it goes. First off, want to start up Photoshop. And when you do, you're first treated to a little dialog that says, what size of canvas or what size of graphic would you like to create? And I'm going to go for a very specific size. When I hit Create New, I'm looking for something that is 500 by 500 pixels in size. And it's really important to make sure you are working in pixels for any of these exercises. So change it there, type in the numbers. If you have slightly different numbers like 400 by 300, don't worry, works fine. I've punched in a value of 90 for the resolution because that's roughly what a monitor is, but it really doesn't matter for that because we're not taking it to a hard copy printout. When you hit Create, you get a canvas that shows up on the screen. And just for orientation, the canvas is where you draw. The toolbar is off to the side. The drop-down menu up at the top, and just under the drop-down menu are the options for whichever tool you have currently chosen. And I'm going to set this to the default. It normally starts as a rectangular marquee there. On the right-hand side are palettes or panels. I call them palettes because that's old school talk. And we're going to set all these things up so they behave the way we want. First thing to do the first time you start up Photoshop, go to Edit and Preferences. And we're going to set up the units that we're going to be dealing with. And the units you want to deal with always is pixels, at least for the stuff we do in our class. And before you leave this panel or palette, let's go on down to guides as well. Let's set the guides so they are also giving us a grid in pixels. You can see there's too many pixels there now. So I'm going to have a grid line every 100 pixels with only 2 subdivisions within each one of those grid spaces. So what I have here is something that matches the canvas that I was making. I have 500 by 500, so that gives me 5 grids across. Great. Next, I want to set up my palettes or panels on the right-hand side. It's really crucial for me to pay attention to my layers panel. It's down here at the bottom, but it's kind of crowded out by everything else here. You can actually undock some of these panels. So if you click on something like this and see Properties, Libraries, I don't really need this. Grab a blank area beside a panel and you can remove it. And that makes a little bit of space, and you can close it as well. And then I get my layers back by clicking on this tab right here. Keep your eyes on the layers. So next, to start drawing a happy face, I'm going to suggest the superpower of Photoshop is that you can draw in layers. And down at the bottom right, this is something that's called Create New Layer. And if you hover over it, it'll actually give you a little sign that tells you what that is. So create a new layer, and you'll see it pop over top of the background, and its default name is Layer 1. Let's change the name of that by double-clicking it and calling it Face, because we're going to start by drawing a happy face. And now, because we want to choose a good color for the happy face, go on down to where the foreground and background colors are in the toolbar, click on the foreground color, and choose yourself a decent color of yellow. And you can see on the right-hand side is the hue. So we're going to choose something in the yellow hues. And then you can choose the saturation and the tone. Tone is up and down. That's how light or dark it is. And saturation is how rich in color it is, from not very rich in color all the way up to the richest you can get, which is fully saturated. I'm going to go first, fully saturated yellow, and say OK. And now to draw the circle for the happy face, I'm going to use another tool. I'm hovering over the rectangular marquee tool, but I'm going to click and hold on that so I can change it to an elliptical. And hopefully that showed up there. Yeah, elliptical marquee tool. That's the one we want to use. Now there are other tools that would do the job too, but I'm going from the basics here. And I want to make a happy face that's going to be, you know what, you can choose just about any size you want. I'm going to start at a grid here. I'd like to use the grids to snap this so it's going to be perfectly sized. To double check and see that this is working properly, Show shows us our grid. I think that should have been on by default. But Snap and Snap to may or may not be on. Oh yeah, it's snapping to grid, guides, layers. For now, that's going to be helpful for us. So I'm going to start by clicking and dragging here in the top left corner. It's going to snap to that point. And I'm going to go down to this one. So I started at sort of a 50 pixels from the left side. I'm going to 50 from the right side and from the top and bottom. It snaps into place and it gives me a perfect circle. Great. Now I want to fill that up with that yellow color. There's a couple of different ways to do that. The way I'd like you to get to know is to use some keyboard commands, but I'll show you the secret underneath this gradient tool here. If you click and hold on that, you can get the paint bucket tool. And for some people, they would prefer that. Clicking with the paint bucket tool will definitely do it as long as you've chosen a layer. Notice I can't do anything right now. Before you draw, click a layer, and then you can fill it in. But I'm going to show you another way that I want you to learn, and that is to hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and tap your Delete key. And if you do, it'll just simply fill in whatever you have selected on the layer that you've selected with whatever the default or foreground color is. Okie doke. I'm going to deselect that selection now. I'm done with that. So Control D deselects. There's other ways to deselect. You can just go back to the selection tool and click outside. But if you learn these shortcut keys, you're going to move a lot faster. So try to commit yourself to those. Next, we want to draw some eyes. So I'm going to click up here and I'm going to create a layer called Eye. And this time we'd like to, take it to black and white, like just a black eye. To quickly change the default color down here, you can click on this and you could go all the way down and choose a nice dark color. That would work. Here's a faster way. Right above the foreground color is a little button that changes it automatically to black and white. And if you click on this, you have black in the foreground, and I'm just going to try to draw an ellipse that's going to look sort of like a happy face color, and I'm going to try that trick again. As long as I'm in the eye layer, Alt-Delete gives me the eye, Control-D deselects. To make the second eye exactly the same, a lot of people are tempted to say copy-paste, but I'm trying to show you some of the other tricks. If you want to duplicate the eye that was in this layer, just duplicate the layer with Control-J. Control-J makes another layer called Eye Copy. And now I'm going to use the Move tool, and I'd like to slide that eye to the right. If I start moving it like this, it tends to have this little feature that keeps it in alignment. If you hold the Shift key, it'll absolutely lock it into alignment. I'm going to try to put it roughly symmetrically where the other one was. Now I can see this one here is a little bit off that grid line, so I can use the grid line, maybe move it back into place, and now I've got symmetrical eyes. Excellent. Next, I would like to make a new layer, and I'm going to make a mouth. I'm going to go to the top layer. Actually, if I left it here and I hit new layer and made something called mouth, you'll see with these layers that they can be slid around. So if I wanted to keep the eyes together, I could actually grab that eye layer and move it down, so mouth is now on top. And to make a mouth, again, I'm going to use the oval tool. I'm going to do the oval tool for just about everything we're doing here. And you want to make a mouth, okay, make a selection on the mouth layer, something that's roughly near the middle. We can move this around later if you want. And to fill that one in, again, Alt-Delete. And that looks like a pretty simple mouth, but here's the nice superpower of having a select tool. You can actually take the selection and move the selection up a little bit, and then hit the Delete key, and it's going to delete the opaque pixels just from the mouth layer. So when we hit Delete, you get yourself the happy face. Control-D to deselect. There's your easy peasy happy face. This has been the introduction to drawing the happy face. Part 2 will show you how to customize it, start adding more layers, get a little more advanced with the gradient tool as well. But we'll hit you in Part 2. So go look for that. See you in a bit.